this new update. Now, I live in the city of Poway, and I enjoy talking about some of the news stories in my hometown of Poway. And this controversy with Lifetime Fitness has been cooking now for at least a year, I think. Now, let me just sort of tee it up for our new listeners and viewers. There's a brand new housing development going in North Poway at the site of the old Stone Ridge Country Club. It was a golf course. And it was purchased by a guy named Michael Schlesinger, who clearly had motivation to turn that into housing development, but he was unable to do that because here in the city of Poway, there was proposition, what is the letter for it? I can't remember, but back in the late 80s, they passed a proposition that would essentially require a public vote to transform any open space, or in this case, open space recreational land that's zoned for open space recreational, and a public vote would be required to change that to make it available for, say, for single family housing. And so when Schlesinger bought this property, that was his goal. And he shut down the golf course, let it go to hell. Weeds were growing. It was a fire hazard, yada, yada. And then he came out with he got the city to put a bill forward in 2017 to essentially have the golf course converted to housing. And it was shot down by Poway voters, mostly because they didn't like Michael Schlesinger, because he had a lot of underhanded tactics, especially what he had done at other golf courses in Escondido and elsewhere. Well, then in 2020, one of our local sort of property management guys, commercial real estate guy, Kevin McNamara, who's pretty influential in the city, he got involved in this project, and he took the leadership role in driving a new public vote through in 2020, which passed. And I had Kevin McNamara on the podcast, and we talked for 2 or 3 hours about his program for the farm in Poway and a lot of other stuff in Poway. It was a very interesting podcast. You want to check that out because Kevin McNamara knows a lot of people and has strong opinions on things. And so if you're interested in Poway history, Poway politics, Poway real estate, it was a fascinating conversation. I think that was my episode number 100. Well, anyways, when Kevin McNamara was here in this podcast studio, he said the plan that is approved by voters will not change. The only way it can change is if there is a additional vote by the public. Well, now there is a desire to make a change. Originally they were going to have a 3,000 square foot fitness club, with some machines and, 3,000 square feet, not terribly big, but like something that would be nice for the community there, maybe, next to the tennis courts and, kind of a neighborhood level recreational fitness club. And that was baked into the proposition. It was Measure P that was approved here by the Poway voters in 2020, and it was approved. And there are still people that were naysayers about the project, and there's still naysayers. And I mean, frankly, you go up and look. My wife and I actually drove around the farm, and we went in and looked at the houses. We were driving around on the streets. It's incredible how that area has been transformed. And many of the homes are already done. People are already moving into these, but there's still a lot of heavy construction equipment that's out there. But now they want to change the plan, and they want to put in a Lifetime Fitness, which is the name of a corporation like 24 Hour Fitness or LA Fitness. And they want to put in roughly speaking, a 30,000 square foot facility. And this is the photo rendering that they were using now. The previous one I was able to get showed it was a 2-story building. Here it's 1 story. I'm not sure what it's going to be. But a lot of the naysayers to this plan, particularly the people that wanted to hold true to what the voters voted for, have convinced city officials to set up a community meeting with the people from Lifetime Fitness. And so that meeting is going to occur on Wednesday, November 1st, which is a week from today. And they're going to basically break it all down. Now, this plan, by the way, is going to include a cafe, a bistro, a center offering cardio strength training, studios offering classes for all ages. The center would also feature outdoor activities, including swimming, a space for 6 pickleball courts or 3 tennis courts. So, they're kind of playing up all these amenities for the community. But the challenge is that Measure P said you can't change anything unless it goes to a public vote. And so now the city council is in kind of this weird predicament. They can either say, sorry, Charlie, you got to go to a public vote, or they might be able to way to finagle this to find a loophole or some backdoor way of getting it approved. And now this is going to go before the city council on Tuesday, December 5th. So they're doing this community meeting on the 1st, and I think they're having a second community meeting. And it's going to be November 1st from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Poway City Hall Council Chambers, where they hold their city council meetings. And they're just basically going to roll out the program and explain it to everybody. And then most likely, if they're going to field questions from the community, and they're probably going to get a lot of heated questions. And then once they've completed that, then the city council will make a decision. And most likely, if the city council gives it a green light, it's going to probably have to go to voters in November of 2024. But in a lot of ways, this is sort of a transparency thing, or maybe some might say a dog and pony thing, where they're going to come out and they're going to present everything just so they can say they had a community meeting and they shared everything with the public. I mean, McNamara did that with the with the farm in Poway, had a big community meeting over here at Painted Rock Elementary in Green Valley, and brought in a lot of his architects and construction companies and landscape architects and shared the plan. And it makes sense from their perspective, especially if the city council or the community, whether they're voting or not, is involved in any way, shape, or form. It makes sense to have the community meeting so you can at least check the box and said, we had the community meeting. Now, a new neighborhood meeting would give the developer, this by the way, is a quote from several community residents that were demanding the meeting. It says, a new neighborhood meeting would give the developer and city a chance to clarify any misperceptions or other misinformation that has been posted on social media, probably talking about podcasters like me, and it would give the public access to accurate information as related to the Lifetime proposal. Okay, that's fair. If they want to do this project, have a meeting and share it with the people and get their input and thoughts. And so I'm curious. I'm going to go to this meeting. I'm curious to see what people are going to be saying at this meeting, and if people are going to be angry or upset or what that is. Ed Franklin, by the way, on the live stream, he says, do you know if that was bid out to other companies? I don't believe it was. My understanding is that the commercial area of the farm, the residential portion of the farm is Lennar Homes, and they're building all the houses. And I believe Michael Schlesinger still owns that land. I think that's a topic of dispute. A lot of the naysayers on the project are still saying Michael Schlesinger is involved when McNamara promised Schlesinger would be out. But at any rate, I know that the commercial portion of the property, where they're going to have, there's supposed to be a restaurant, bar, cafe of some kind. There's all of the farming. There's going to be like a community farm that's going to be there. There's going to be a barn that can be rented out for weddings, etc. That was part of the plan, and that whole commercial district is owned by Kevin McNamara. And so he's the one that's making the decisions on his private property. I don't believe he, quote, bid it out. I mean, it's really his decision on what to put there. Now, in this case, whatever he decides upon, since it's a change in the plan, would have to get the voter approval. Now, if it were a city-run project, they would have to go out to bid for that. Ed Franklin goes on to say, if it wasn't, that's when it starts to look greasy. Not saying that it is, but it looks bad. Well, yeah, I mean, if it's privately owned land, then the private property owner can go out to bid. My guess is Kevin McNamara probably considered a wide range of other alternatives, but he saw this as a way, not only a way to improve the community, but a way to probably make more money. And I don't fault him in that, but he is locked in based on this Measure P that was passed. And so he's not going to be able to get this through unless he's able to finagle away with the city council leaders to make this go. I'm curious to see how this goes. I'm going to try to go to the meeting, and I'll try to get some video footage. Maybe I can share that on the live stream. But this is interesting to me. Now, McNamara did say that the farm is already 2/3 completed. And if you've driven through there, that makes sense. I mean, they've got houses, people are moved in, landscaping going in. I mean, it's amazing how much they've accomplished already. And the construction should be finalized by the fall of 2024 or earlier. But clearly, this commercial zone, I don't know how big it's going to be, maybe a block or something like that, a couple of blocks. That part obviously won't be completed because they're trying to figure out if they're going to have this. Now, in my opinion, this is just one man's opinion here. I don't think the public should be voting on this in the first place. I mean, if it's private property, the public shouldn't have been involved in limiting the area from being developed unless a public vote occurred. And now the public vote is locked in, McNamara and the other developers from making a change in their fitness club plan. Now, granted, this is a significant change. I don't agree with having voters approve what private property owners do on their own property. But the reality is, the facts is that that's the way the law is set up, particularly because of the proposition was passed in the late 80s in Poway that required public vote to transform open space to residential. And now that it was transformed because of Measure P in 2020, it's going to require a public vote if there's going to be a change. So I'm kind of I'm of the opinion that I don't like it that we have to go to a public vote to make this change. McNamara, in my opinion, should be able to do it on his own. But the reality is that he does have to go to a public vote because that's the way the law is written. Like the law or not like the law, that's the way the law is written. But I think it's a pretty interesting story. So what do you think? If you're living here in the city of Poway, maybe you have thoughts and comments on that. And Ed Franklin says, I know, but if it's a community's decision, really, if there's a vote, I mean, again, if you wanted to, add like an ADU, a granny flat into your back property of your house, I don't think that should be a community decision. If you own the land, you should be able to build on land. And it's the fact that it becomes a community decision is when you get the situation where developers end up greasing the palms of elected candidates by either funding their campaign or by funding PACs, which attack their competitors. And you have a lot of money flowing into all these elections, largely from the people that are in the building industry, because they want to be able to influence local officials in order to get their projects approved. And then you end up with that cronyism. And that's definitely where things get greasy. But I think it's an interesting story. Okay, let's move on.